Hi, everyone. It's great to see you today. We're really glad you were able to join us for our webinar today about the master's programs in pathology and anatomical sciences. So my name is Beth White, and I'm the Director of Graduate Enrollment in the Jacobs School. I work with our graduate programs broadly and also with some of our specific master's and PhD programs. But what we're here today to talk about is Dr. Kaliga's program. So I'm going to turn it over to him so he can talk about their master's opportunities. And then there's a couple of questions that we can kind of field at the end. So Dr. Kaliga.
Okay, let me share my screen. As Elizabeth said, I am the Director of Graduate Studies in the Department of Pathology and Anatomical Sciences. And what I'd like to do in this session is do three things, really: to tell you who we are, and then what it is that we do in our programs, and then, if you're assuming you're interested in those programs, how you can become part of them. So, who are the Department of Pathology and Anatomical Sciences? We are a very unique combination in terms of graduate programs, in that we have a basic science research faculty, like a biological science department or a chemistry department or physiology department. But unlike those departments, we also have a clinical arm of the department. A large number of our faculty are practicing physicians, seeing patient diagnoses in the hospitals and working with clinical practices, and not teaching graduate students. And what that combination allows us to do is provide a very broad range of training opportunities that can be tailored for different kinds of futures. So we can train students for your typical biomedical research track, like you would in a biology department. But we can also train students who are interested in going on to the medical professions, to medical school or a PA program, so on. And we also have training oriented towards instructional careers. There's a lot of people who are needed to teach in medical schools, in nursing programs, all the undergraduate programs that require an anatomy course. So we produce all three of those flavors of trainees. In fact, if we look at the last 10 graduates of our master's programs, 4 have gone to the medical professions. One's an MD, another is a DO, physician's assistant, and another just graduated and is going on to a program to become a pathology assistant, which is kind of like a PA, but in working with medical examiners, coroner offices, working with pathologists in hospital labs, and that sort of career. Another 4 took the more typical graduate route of going on in research in academia or industry. One is a senior scientist at Biocon, a big pharmaceutical company. Another is an associate scientist at Fresenius Kabi, which is a company that develops medical devices and a lot of products for transfusion medicine. The third is now a pathology resource technologist at Roswell Park Cancer Center. And the fourth is a quality assurance analyst at Thermo Fisher Scientific. And then of the remaining 2, one is a simulation operations specialist in the Bailing Simulation Center. What the Simulation Center does is it does medical simulations for training purposes. So medical students who are learning to give patient exams or to draw blood, nursing students. The Simulation Center provides simulated patients. It provides a lot of artificial models, the CPR dummy kinds of things, but for a lot of different medical processes. And the last of those 10 got his master's degree and then went further in graduate school and went from here to Case Western. And along those lines, I should point out that there were 2 other students in this same window who didn't finish the master's program, but instead realized once they'd gotten started that the research track was really where they wanted to go, and they wanted to stay and go to a PhD program, and they transferred into the PhD program and are currently in their 3rd and 4th years of their dissertation work. So what is it that we do that provides those different kinds of training opportunities? Well, as you probably know, pathology is the study of disease. And it has a particular emphasis on the structure and organization of cells and tissues and using that to understand disease. So the clinicians in our department are making patient diagnosis, designing treatment options based on looking at histology specimens, at tissue biopsies, laboratory test results on the biological material from patients, and trying to figure out what's going on with the patient. And the research faculty in the program are seeking to understand the mechanisms of those diseases from those kinds of analyses. And because we have a department that has both of these activities going on, collaborations between the clinicians and the research scientists are aimed primarily at either developing better tools, so seeking to improve the accuracy of the diagnoses, the speed at which they can be achieved, better insights into the nature of the disease so we can design better therapies and treatments, and sort of the things you'd expect biomedical research to do. So the pathology is the study of the structure and organization in disease. What the anatomical sciences half of the department is the study of the normal structure and organization. And so these 2 things readily go hand in hand. So the anatomical sciences is the normal structure and function. The pathology is the disease, and the individual faculty identify as one or the other, but their expertise is in both areas. And something I'd like to point out about the anatomical sciences is that when people look at anatomy, they think dissection, cadaver labs, gross anatomy, and this kind of material we're seeing here. But the anatomical sciences includes structure and organization at all sizes of biology. So that includes the microscopic scale as well. So embryology, histology are part of the anatomical sciences. And in fact, most of our faculty are much more on the microscopic end of the spectrum than on the gross end. And because of the anatomical sciences being so invested in histology, embryology, microscopic anatomy, there's a very strong relationship between the anatomical sciences and cell biology. So microscopy, cell culture, cell analysis through gene expression, Western blots, protein biochemistry, those sorts of things are a very natural extension of the anatomical sciences, and where most of our research faculty are engaged in biomedical research is through the cell biology rather than the gross anatomy aspect. So if you look at specifically what the research interests are in our department, you can break it down into sort of five major areas. Pathology and anatomy covers a huge amount of ground. We are not a huge department, so there are some very specific areas that our faculty work on and are interested in. We don't offer everything for everyone. So vascular cell biology is one of our focuses. There are 3 laboratories that I would consider vascular labs with interests in arterial stiffness and things like hardening of the arteries and the relationship between stiffness and cardiovascular disease, and especially brain aneurysms, which are linked to the cell biology of the arterial wall. Another set of labs is emphasizing digital pathology, where they're using the images that the pathologists look at when they're diagnosing a tumor or a tissue specimen from a patient, and quantifying what's in those images and relating that to disease and disease mechanism or disease prediction, and using that as a tool to study kidney disease and lung and oral cancers. Now, the groups that are doing that are also very interested in the computer science side of that equation. So we're interested in analyzing the disease, but also in figuring out better ways to use the computational tools to extract information from histology slides, from CT scans. So they are interested in computer-based biomedical image analysis methods in developing those. A fourth area of interest is neuroscience. There are 3 or 4 faculty that would identify themselves as neuroscientists, and they work in the areas of neuropathic pain, traumatic brain injury, and fetal alcohol disorders. And finally, the faculty in our program who are heavily engaged in teaching of medical students, teaching of undergraduate anatomy courses in the health sciences like nursing programs and pharmacy and physical therapy, occupational therapy. Those faculty don't do a lot of wet lab types of research, but have projects that are involved in developing instructional tools, using digital histology to teach histology, virtual dissection, other ways of modeling anatomy besides cadaver dissection, because that's a tool that's not accessible to everyone. And so there are faculty engaged in instructional research as well. And if you are interested in any of these areas, those are things that can be done here. And if you want to know more specific descriptions of specific faculty interests and see what kinds of projects you might be involved in if you came here, there are more detailed descriptions for each faculty member at the website here, which there's a link to from the department website, which probably got you to this webinar in the first place. So if you find that we're doing things that you're interested in that would help you towards your career objectives, how do you join us? Well, we have 2 master's programs. One is Anatomical Sciences, the other is Pathology, and you can apply to either one. If you're accepted into one or the other, you'd be accepted into the other program, so it doesn't improve your odds to apply to both. And the reality is that there's not a lot of difference in terms of what you would do if you came as an anatomy student or as a pathology student. All the same faculty that you would choose among in terms of what you would do your master's project on. There are differences in the course requirements, but the courses are flexible in a way that it's only one or two different courses depending on which one you choose. The main decision in terms of anatomical sciences versus pathology is which title you think looks better on your resume in terms of your goals. So I'll talk a little bit more about the specifics, but both programs are designed to teach essential skills and core knowledge in anatomical sciences and pathology, but to do so while allowing enough flexibility that you can focus on material that's specific to your specific objectives. So for example, if you enter the Anatomical Sciences Program and your goal is to go on in research in academia or industry, you can take, you can select from the course options that give you more analytical courses, and you would choose a advisor and project that would give you a cell molecular type thesis. But if your real interest is getting into medical school, then you could choose the courses that are more clinically oriented classes and work on a more clinically oriented project or thesis and do less wet lab biochemistry, for example. And someone who's interested in an instructional career would take courses similar to the medical profession track, because those are the courses that you would be likely to teach in that sort of career. And then instead of doing a thesis on a clinical or cell molecular project, you'd work on something that would be more focused on developing a teaching portfolio. And these are the courses specifically offered within our program. There are students in our program can also take courses in the other biomedical departments, depending on what's appropriate for their projects and their interests. But in terms of requirements, they all arise from within the department list here. In order to accommodate those range of interests, you choose a specific number of courses from a series of options, depending on whether you're in pathology or anatomical sciences. And those options include, at the macroscopic level, a variety of different kinds of human anatomy. You have microscopic courses, histology, optical microscopy, computational methods for microscopic anatomy. We also have a couple of hardcore analytical courses in terms of computational approaches for analyzing biomedical data. And then the more general foundational courses of cell biology, pathology, neuroscience. Depending on your track, nobody takes all of these. You take a selection geared towards your particular project and career objectives within the range of, you have to take at least these specific requirements. Everyone takes a seminar course that meets every semester. So everyone has to take it each semester that they're in their program. And that seminar course is designed at developing general skill set for biomedical science. So communication skills, writing skills, also general literacy. Part of the graduate seminar course requires you to attend the departmental monthly seminars so that you see what happens over the whole spectrum of the field and kind of understand what's going on, at least at a superficial level, outside of the narrow focus of your particular thesis project, so that when you leave, you are literate in pathology and anatomical sciences in general. I'd also like to point out that these courses highlighted in red here are all courses that have hands-on laboratories as the major component for most of them, but at least a significant component for all of them as part of the instruction, because our graduate program is much more interested in students engaging in the real activities that they will be performing when they leave, and not spending all the time in abstract, pure lecture-based instruction. So a very hands-on oriented program. The program is designed to be completed in 2 years. In the first year, beginning the first semester is primarily coursework, but in order to begin to find a project for your master's capstone experience, everyone's required to do laboratory rotations so that you can start to check out options for what you might be able to work on in order to identify as soon as possible where your master's project or master's thesis will be conducted. And then in the spring of the first year, there's still a fair amount of coursework, but you start hopefully to begin to identify and choose an area where you can start getting some preliminary data or some preliminary work done to flesh out the idea for what your thesis will become, so that in the second year, the balance flips, and there might be a course or two you still want to take because of your particular interests, or maybe one more requirement. But most of the second year will be directed towards the thesis project work, with the spring semester in particular being where things will be finalized, final data obtained, and a lot of time spent writing the thesis or project. So students typically finish by the end of the second year, or sometimes going into the one semester beyond that, or the summer beyond the second year. Now, if that is once you've looked at what we do and that general outline of how the program works, you are interested in applying. What we're looking at when you apply are 4 things: grades, personal statement, letters of reference, and, although it's not required, research experience, which is a major plus if you have it. In terms of grades, what we're looking for is overall academic performance, but we're particularly interested in STEM courses, and not just biology, but chemistry, calculus, physics. Those are all nice things to have, and count very positively. We like to see strong performances in those areas. We're also pay a lot of attention to the trajectory of your performance. So if you took a little while to figure out college, you didn't do so great as a freshman or sophomore, say, and then figured out what you wanted to do with your life, and halfway through, and you're getting A's and B's in all your 400 level courses as juniors and senior, not so hot a GPA in your first years, we'll look at that very favorably. You don't have to be a straight A student from the start. On the other hand, if you're a straight A student as a freshman and only managing C's in your senior year, then that's not a good look. The personal statement is something that I think a lot of graduate students or applicants undervalue. They don't recognize its importance. What we're looking at in your personal statement is to see your objectives and motivation. Why do you want to go to graduate school, and why our program? What is it that you're looking for, and why do you think we can provide it? Because particularly in a smaller program like ours, it's important that there's a good match, that there's a fit for you, because there isn't an infinite selection for you to find someone who happens to do what you do. So in your personal statement, let us know, where you want to go with this and what attracted you to our program. Also use that statement to address anything unusual in your record that you think might be a problem. If you had a very poor semester and it turns out you were taking 18 credits and working 3 part-time jobs and were hospitalized for half the semester, tell us those outside of the paper record things that were going on that would explain difficulties or things that there's a 2-year gap. What were you doing during that period? And then, letters of reference. We're looking for people who can tell us about, especially your academic and professional abilities, but people who know you well enough to tell us about your personal qualities in terms of work ethics, communication skills, how you get along with people, your ability to problem solve, response to stress and working under critical situations. And that might not come from a course or academic advisor or someone's lab that you worked in. That could also come from outside experience, summer internship, a job in another area where you had responsibilities that were relevant to those kinds of skills. And as I mentioned before, research experience is a very valuable plus in your application. So if you've done any research, tell us about it. Give us the big picture of what the research was about, and then give us a little bit of detail about what it was that you did specifically and what your contributions were. And if you haven't done any research, that's fine. We recognize that master's program is often a way to obtain research experience, and there are a lot of schools where there aren't a lot of research opportunities if you're not at a big academic center like UB that has a lot of externally funded research programs going on. So we will look at those paper records, and based on those, we will select students for interview, and anybody that we accept will first be interviewed, and usually set that up by Zoom. If you're local, you may do it in person, or we've also done them by phone. Zoom is not a practical opportunity for you. And the interview is an opportunity for us to ask about anything that is missing in the paper record, to get a better feeling for the kinds of things that you can't assess purely from grades and numbers, communication skills, enthusiasm, things like that. It's also an opportunity for you to learn about us. So if you're chosen to be interviewed, think about what you want to know about the program, because that will be an opportunity, and what you want to know about the program can also help us learn about your motivation and interests as well. So the timeline for this, we'll continue looking at admissions or applications till the beginning of May. So May 1st is our deadline for domestic applications. If you're an international student, we need to get them earlier than that because of visa processing issues. So April 1st is our deadline for international applicants. We do sort of a rolling application process. So we look at applications periodically as they come in. So typically within 2 to 4 weeks, now that the review process has started, 2 to 4 weeks after your application is complete, we'll have a decision about whether we'll interview or not, and we'll send out an invitation to interview. And once we have an interview, within 2 to 4 weeks of the interview, we'll have a decision. And I think that's pretty much all I have. Anything that I should address that I might have left out?
I think sometimes I wonder if students, we have questions frequently about standardized test scores and whether GRE is a factor in your admissions process.
I forgot to mention that on that slide. Yeah, so what I listed on earlier slide here, grades, so your transcripts, your statement, your letters, and anything you tell us about your research experience, that's what we look at in our review process. GREs, standardized tests, are not required. If you want to take them and submit them, we will look at them, but it is not a requirement, and yeah, so they're not required.
Great, yeah, and to clarify, for international students, the English proficiency test would be required if you're an international student from a country where English is not the native language. So UB is actually very flexible around those tests right now because of pandemic restrictions. So I'll paste in the chat the website that would give you the different testing options that you have for those right now, especially even as late as fall of 2022. I think we'll still be fairly flexible on what types of tests we will accept because of difficulty getting into testing centers. Yeah, I think this is all really interesting. And I know, Dr. Kaliga, that, it seems that as you mentioned a little bit earlier, I mean, when people think of pathology and anatomical sciences, they do often think of that sort of large scale cadaver related work. And your department, I think, has really made a choice to shift in a more computational direction. And I think people sometimes don't think of that as part of your discipline.
Yes, and I think even without the computational element, which is a major focus, I think, as was clear in the research interests, the pathology and anatomical sciences has always been very cell tissue microscopy oriented. although the public face, comes from gross anatomy and the medical examiner TV shows.
Right, right.
And so some of the science that you'll see in the sort of the coroner medical examiner type shows is comes from the same kinds of tools that we use, but they're used in a very different way, and we're not solving crimes, but solving mysteries of how the biology works and how to fix people.
Right. Yes. So, and not necessarily NCIS, but still very, very interesting. Did you want to say anything in addition about the shift from the MA programs to the new MS programs that are coming?
Yes. Thank you for asking that, because so currently our programs are anatomical sciences and pathology, and both of those are MAs. But we recently obtained approval from the SUNY system to convert our program degrees to MSs. And we've also approved name changes in the program that are also accompanied by some small changes in course requirements and the curriculum. So starting sometime in 2022, there's a number of administrative processes that have to take place first. Students in our graduate programs will be able, instead of getting a master's in anatomy or pathology, can get a master's either in a program called Medical Anatomy and Experimental Pathology, or Computational Cell Biology, Anatomy and Pathology. And the Medical Anatomy Experimental Pathology track is more akin to the curriculum that you would take in the current model if you were interested in a medical profession or instructional career. So the emphasis would be clinical courses and a more medical instructional clinical capstone project for that degree. Whereas the computational cell biology, anatomy, and pathology would be for students who are interested in research, laboratory type career, and would have the more analytical course requirements. And the way we're anticipating this working is students who enter now will be applying under the anatomical sciences and pathology titles and complete that program with those degrees. But as these other program names come online, if those students wish to fulfill those requirements instead and get the MS and that different degree title, that will be automatic in terms of our admissions committee. The transfer between programs would be easily achieved, and it would be a paperwork thing, not you have to go back and achieve a new hurdle. in order to be switched to that program title.
Great. Yeah, those are great opportunities. And I would think that students will be happy to have that flexibility. So those are great options. Well, thank you very much. I think this was a really great overview of your program options. And I hope that for those of you watching that you'll contact Dr. Kaliga if you have any additional questions. I'm going to paste the website for the graduate programs in their department here in the chat. So feel free to follow up there. And Dr. Kaliga's contact information would be there as well. So
yes, and I'm happy to answer any questions about how the program works, about how the admissions works, about what the different faculty are doing in the program, and to put you in touch with specific faculty if there are areas that you're particularly interested in.
Wonderful. Great. Well, thanks so much, Dr. Kaliga, and thanks everyone for watching today.